Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with another special feature, and this one's called Are These the 10 Most Influential Bass Players of All Time? So when I look at these 12 musicians, I thought you said it was 10. Well, it started off as 10 and 2 more may have crept in, so we'll have to see. It might even be 9. Or it might be 10, but I'm going to try and keep it to 10. But actually, there might be a couple who slip in as I do this because it's based on how I feel about them right now. And I haven't put in the description who they are. So if you want to see who's number one, and do I mean number one, or do I just mean it was the last one I mentioned? You'll have to wait and see at the end of the video. How have I picked these 10 or 12-ish influential bass players? How have I done this? Well, I am a huge Deep Purple fan. I'm saying this up front because Roger Glover and Glenn Hughes aren't in this top 10. And what I'm trying to say is how I've picked these musicians is because of when I listened to these bands or albums that these guys were on, I was drawn towards the bass playing. With Deep Purple, I was drawn towards Ritchie Blackmore, John Lord and Ian Pace. My ears went to certain things. So to be in this list, it's because I heard music with these guys in, and I was drawn towards the bass guitar almost immediately more than the voice or the guitars or keyboards or the drums. I was drawn towards the bass players. So that's how I have made this list. Now, some of the ones in this list, you're going to go, well, how could that person not be in? Some of the people I mentioned, you're going to go, I have no idea where that is, perhaps. And a lot of you are going to go, where the hell is X, Y, and Z? Because this is a ridiculous list. It is based on as my time of listening to music through the decades, how certain musicians have kind of bubbled up to the surface in the world of bass players. I'm going to do this for other people as well. But for bass players, this is, slapping the bass. This is the moment of the bass player, of the lower register, of the 4-string gods in popular music and some jazz as well, I might add. So at number 12 or 10, depending on how this goes, is a guy called, you ready? I bet you're not. Called Wizard. Yes, Wizard on bass guitar and backing vocals on the same album that features a guy called Moses on guitar. And on drums is BB. Any clues? No one talking about? Mother's Finest, 1981. Produced by Jeff Glicksman. Now there's a guy who knows how to make something sound pretty good as it comes out your speakers, even on your music centre back in the early 80s. Mother's Finest. I got this record, can you see that? I just need to move out of the way because I've got my camera right in the middle of the lens. I got that because of the cover. I knew nothing about them. In fact, when you look at the back of the cover, you don't know anything about them. You don't know the fact that, it's a band made up of, black and white musicians. And also, I love this band. I've got everything they've done. I love the funk. I love the disco. I love everything. I love, Joyce, his voice. She has got such a fantastic Baby Jean, Joyce Kennedy on vocals. I just love everything about them. And Black Radio Won't Play This album is also a good one. What was it about this that made me just go straight to the bass player? This is one of these records, I think, where the tracks are actually listed on the back of the cover, not in the order they actually appear when you put the record on. Some bands used to do that. I don't know why. Weird, really. Moving On is the first track. It starts with fantastic guitar riffs. The guitar sound on this album, Gene's voice is fantastic, everything about it. But what really strikes you is the bass playing, this rumbling, slapping, bass-driven player, Wizard. and it just hits you in the chest. It's like being down the front few rows of the Birmingham Odeon in the late 70s, 80s, where the bass is hitting you in the chest. And it doesn't matter how loud you have this album on, you are aware of the bass playing as it weaves in and out of the track. And it's still now when I play this, it makes me aware of how a lot of modern music, a lot of where there's less separation, there's more of a mush around things. This is just drums with space, soundstage, vocals, backing vocals, guitars, rich guitars, but the bass, but this guy, wizard. Absolutely super. I could have picked other stuff, but to me, this is the album where I think they all were in a room and someone said, I don't know, do you think we should just do an all-out rock album, see what happens? And they went, yeah, go on then. Because the one after this was basically a disco extravaganza. So it obviously didn't sell as well as you might hope. But every home should have one of those anyway. Seriously. Great. Wizard is number 12, could be, in my list of top 10 most influential bass players of all time. This is weird, isn't it? Okay, who's number 10 then? Is it 10? Oh, God, I don't know. Anyway, the next one in my list is Lemmy. And the track that I've picked for this one is Overkill. Now, this is 1979, isn't it, I think? For a lot of bands with like bass, drums, guitar, when the lead guitarist took a solo, there was obviously a gap between where the guitarist was going up here and where the bass player was down here, and in the middle register there was a gap. So a lot of bands would then look around and think, do you know what, I think we need a keyboard player, or we need another guitarist, we need something to fill out the space in between, so when I'm playing a lead guitar solo, it doesn't sound empty. That was never an issue for Motorhead, ever. Because the way Lemmy approached playing the bass was like the way he approached playing the guitar. He was playing chords. He was basically playing rhythm guitar on a bass guitar. So the sound is immense. So, wherever the guitar is, whether it was Fast Eddie saying, is it okay if I take a solo now? I'm taking a solo. Lemmy would have said, don't worry about it, mate. Everything down below that frequency is my world. And in fact, he crept up. The sound of Lemmy's bass is, again, up. It also envelops the range of frequencies that the rhythm guitarist would take without taking anything away from bass that's so low that if you play Motorhead at the right volume, and you know what the right volume is for Motorhead, don't you? You'll know it's the right volume because the termites and small creatures that live in the floorboards of your home will be packing their suitcases and leaving quite quickly. In fact, if you want to make sure that your house doesn't have problems like that, play Motorhead. Works every time. But Lemmy, seriously, he is unique in that. And again, as I said at the start of this video, I've picked people that when I played things the first time, I was drawn towards that instrument, the bass guitar. And with Motorhead, in fact, the first Motorhead track I ever heard was Motorhead by Motorhead. It's a 12-inch single on Chiswick Records, which I have somewhere. I must find that. And all you can hear all these slabs of guitar from Fast Eddie, but it is Lemmy's show. And also, Lemmy was doing this while singing in the only way that Lemmy can. So we miss Lemmy. And he is in my list of the most influential bass players of all time. Who's next? The next guy, I'm just going to put my glasses on to make sure I pronounce his name reasonably correctly, is Leyland Sklar. Who? Now, many of you know who this is, but some of you who are younger viewers or purely have been raised on rock and roll may not. But this is another album where the bass became apparent, even though it was not an album about being a bass player. This was an album about the drums. This was and is Spectrum from 1973 from Billy Cobham. One of the most influential jazz fusion, jazz rock albums of all time. Everyone should hear this. This album was my gateway, the doorway into jazz. I didn't like jazz, me. Don't understand it. It blowing into things, nah. Come Taste the Band arrives. Tommy Bolin. I will need to know more about Tommy Bolin. Where's he from? What did he do before? Phil, you got to hear this Billy Cobham album, Quadrant 4. You got to hear it, man. Never did anything like it. Became a massive Tommy Bolin fan, but it opened the door to jazz. It took me towards so many different things, and it still sounds fantastic. But it was the first track on side 2, nearly 10 minutes long, with a track called Stratus. After you get past the drum solo and the sequencing of the keyboards by Jan Hammer and all this kind of stuff, it drops back, and then this bass riff comes in. A bass riff that's just so hypnotic even. I can't sing it in the microphone, but you know what it's like. It just goes round in the circle, and it's been used by and sampled by so many things over the years. It's just incredible. It doesn't have loads of notes, and it doesn't, but it's focal. It's the center of the wheel of this song. All the other things that go on, even Tommy Bolin's solo and Jan Hammer solo, they are spokes in the wheel. In the center of this is this bass riff that just keeps going. And you can see why Billy Cobham now always has to do some kind of form of this track. And of course, Jeff Beck also has covered it. This album was incredibly influential on Jeff Beck in making him think blow by blow. That's a good phrase. But this, superb. Every home should have one. Go get it. Go listen to it. Never heard of him? Listen to it. Fantastic. So that is Leyland Sklar with, from the album Spectrum by Billy Cobham. Who's next? Someone else I'll probably have a trouble with pronouncing the name. Well, no, it isn't. The next one is Marcus Miller, Renaissance Man. This is the album I picked, not because it's the best. Marcus Miller has played on so many albums. He's, whether it's Miles Davis, his own stuff, he's everywhere. And this is, I think this could be one of 2 or 3 jazz bass players that I've picked here. And I've picked this album because this is from 2012, I think. And I've picked it for a track called Mr. Clean. Because this guy is so funky. He's so, there's a style of bass playing, the slapping the bass, really kind of stuff like Stanley Clarke and all this kind of stuff. But Marcus Miller takes it to a level where it's just so much going on when he does it. It's just, and this track, Mr. Clean, from this album, Renaissance Man, Renaissance even. It's not called Renaissance Man, it's called Renaissance. Mr. Clean, about 3 minutes in, he plays this riff. It's a really funky, slappy, bassy riff. But if you try and kind of walk to it, maybe you're going to the kitchen to put the kettle on to get a cup of tea. It would probably take you a fortnight to get to the kitchen because it's kind of, it almost stands still, but it moves forwards. It's just the offbeats and the timing of it is just so, it's just incredible. So when you listen to that, your brain is nowhere else but bass, just bass. And when you listen to this, you just want more bass. I want more tracks with bass on. I want more slap bass. I want more funk. I want more offbeats. Give me the bass. That's Marcus Miller. Listen to that. Mr. Clean. 3 minutes in. Just play that bit and just set off to the kitchen to see if you can make a cup of tea and come back and let me know what happens. Next is Marius Duda from Riverside. I could have picked any of the albums. I've picked Rapid Eye Movement because the track I'm going to pick on is Panic Room. What I like about Riverside is everything. The Hammond organ, the Dave Gilmour inspired guitar playing, whatever. But because Marius is the main composer, and he's the bass player and the vocalist, everything nearly every song starts with some kind of bass riff, or every song has some kind of dominant bass melody in it. Nearly everything. You listen to the Riverside, this trilogy where this is from, and the other stuff that's come along, nearly everything is driven by his bass riffs and bass melodies, and they are just hypnotic. And so they're one of my favourite bands. But when I first ever heard them, I was drawn to the bass and the fact that they have these kind of really clever bass riffs. Absolutely incredible. But Panic Room is a simple one. It's rock, but it's rock, but it's prog. It's just fantastic. It really, really is, and I love it. I love Riverside. But yeah, if you don't know where to start, Rapid Eye Movement is one of their best albums to me. But they're all best albums to me. But he's incredible. And Lunatic Soul, his offshoot band, some great stuff on that as well. But yeah, what a player. So to me, he's in this list because when I listen to Riverside, my ears are drawn towards the bass. Next. The next one is probably, you won't be surprised that this guy's in there. And it's Chris Squire. Good example of what I was saying at the start of this video about saying it's when my ears are drawn to the bass guitarist before anything else, and it was roundabout. We've got Steve Howe, who I've interviewed a couple of times now. John Anderson, Bill Bruford and Rick Wakeman. This band is chock full of absolutely exceptional musicians. This is a classic progressive rock album. But the thing that, to me, makes up the sound of Yes, I don't mean as soon as you hear John Anderson go, oh. I mean, instrumentally, wherever you put the needle down, is Chris Squire's Rickenbacker bass guitar, which is high in the register, not where a bass guitar usually is. Whereas I said earlier about the bass is down here and the lead guitarist is up here, and we sometimes need something in the middle. Chris Squire, when given any opportunity, was actually up here with Steve Howe. But they managed to hold it down with the keyboards and everything. But Chris Squire is unique and again sadly missed. It's such a rich part of the Yes sound, but also he knew how good he was, didn't he? If you watch those concerts and when it came to the solo spot, a bass solo spot. Think about that. Not everyone can get away with one of them. But Chris Squire could. He's playing, and the track Roundabout is a great example of how, when a lot of music, it's great music, whatever, and the bass is in there, but you don't spot it as easily. But with albums like this, you're aware of Rick Wakeman and Bill Bruford and John Anderson and Steve Howe and Chris Squire. They're all in the mix and they are all getting your attention. But I do feel that with a lot of Yes music, I was always my subconscious, my neural networks in my brain just went to Chris Squire's bass lines, and they still do. Absolutely incredible player. Right, the next one kind of deviates away from me saying as soon as I listened to this band, all I heard was the bass player, because that, for this particular artist, that's not quite true, but it has become true. Geezer Butler, Black Sabbath. Obviously, when I first heard Black Sabbath, it was Tony Iommi, Riffman. It was Ozzy Osbourne. It was Bill Ward. But as the years rolled by, not that many to be fair, I became very aware of the sheer prominence of Geezer Butler's rattling, bubbling bass playing that was sitting in between Bill Ward and Tony Iommi. Tony Iommi put lots of guitar overdubs in, but there was lots of space. There was a complete room in all Black Sabbath music, especially those early albums and some of the Dio ones, where Geezer Butler was free to roam through the forests of metal and do what he does. NIB, and there's the menace in the sound. But the reason why I picked this, probably because of when I turn on the news, I'm very aware that the song War Pigs is the most relevant song in the world at the moment. This came out in 1970. As far as I'm concerned, it came out in 2024. War Pigs by Black Sabbath, one of the most powerful songs. I mean, we have in the UK, we have Remembrance Sunday. They should be playing War Pigs. That's the lesson, everybody. War Pigs by Black Sabbath. But any of this, Hand of Doom, Geezer Butler, of course, Geezer Butler wrote the lyrics to this stuff. So his bass is rumbling along, holding up these precious words of wisdom that have basically become the bedrock of a genre of music that people continue to love, and just to dive in day after day and immerse themselves in this absolutely earthy Birmingham-based riffage, and with his bass coming underneath. Absolutely fantastic. Geezer Butler, absolutely incredible musician. Brilliant. Where are we now? We are now heading towards, I don't know what number one, but we're heading towards number one. John Entwistle. This is, Keith Moon played drums like a lead guitarist. And John Entwistle played bass guitar like a lead guitarist. He played bass guitar like an orchestra. I mean, when you watch those documentaries of John Entwistle playing bass up the corner with the Who, just stood there, it was like a machine. Again, a bit like there's a Lemmy aspect, but with John Entwistle, obviously with his, he could read music training and he's playing brass. He played intricately and very accurately, but was able to, through Pete Townshend's squealing guitars and power chords, he knew he had to have something that held all this together. So Entwistle and Keith Moon, is that the rhythm section? They were like an orchestra, a rock and roll orchestra, really. And so what do I pick for John Entwistle? My Generation. I was going to go for My Generation off Live in Leeds because of the extended foundation of that song going into nearly, 14 minutes long, with all the different riffs, the stops and starts and everything, and how Townsend just decides, I'm going over here now, and Entwistle just follows him. But I haven't. I've picked something from Quadrophenia, and I've picked The Real Me, because the way that John Entwistle's bass almost dances around the power chords and Daltrey's voice and melody lines is incredible. And of course, you have that part of the song where it's just about John Entwistle's bass. But John Entwistle made The Who sound like there was about 10 of them in the band. In fact, more recent versions of The Who have multiple musicians on stage, don't they? Now, to create the sound of The Who. But then it was just Entwistle and Keith Moon and Pete Townsend delivering the music, just the three of them. And John Entwistle was a complete and utter one-off. In fact, everyone I've mentioned is a complete and utter one-off, but I think if you listen back to this and you just realise just how incredible this guy was on the bass guitar. He's not copying anyone, remember. I mean, a lot of musicians now, and no disrespect to anybody, you have a wealth of stuff to go and look up on YouTube and study and dissimulate and decide and be influenced by. What the hell was John Entwistle listening to create that? It just came up from the floorboards through his shins and his legs and his thighs up through his arms, and created this way of playing bass that. There's a documentary with Gordon Giltrap interviewing him. I think you can probably find it on YouTube. And I think Gordon Giltrap asks him to show him how he does something. He's standing in front of this huge rig because it was massive. And he does this stuff, and it's so incredible. It's like John McLaughlin on the bass. It's just incredible. Anyway, John Entwistle could be number 4, 3, I don't know. We're nearly there anyway. Next is not what I thought it was. Right, who are we? Oh, yes. CD again. Jaco Pastorius. This is great. But I could have picked anything. Weather Report, all the stuff he did, Joni Mitchell. But I picked this, and in fact, I picked a track that is probably... I could have picked anything, and you would have just gone along with me. But I've picked a track that I can't pronounce. I think it's Unconcol Y Tropa. But I could have picked anything from this, really. And this has got some wonderful stuff on. There's something about this guy and the way he plays bass that's like nothing I'd heard before. And obviously, this is a bass player, jazz fusion, jazz rock bass player, and it's a solo album by a jazz rock, jazz fusion bass player. So the idea of putting it on and saying I was drawn towards the bass, well, of course I was, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? But it really makes me realise what a great player was. But not just that. Because it's not just someone saying, oh, you got to listen to this, Phil, because this guy's brilliant on the bass. I love the music, the way he plays on this fretless bass, the way the bass moves, the way the songs are put together. And that track I've picked, it's not necessarily lots of virtuoso playing. It's the fact he's playing in a way that fits under this music that's really, really different and complements the music, but it's really unique. I love this album. It's one of my favourite jazz rock albums, actually. But anything with Jan Hammer, different video. Jaco Pastorius. I've got a 2 CD DVD set from him as well. But anyway, this one, give that a listen. But absolutely amazing player and one of the most influential bass players of all time. Next is someone where I haven't got a record prepared. So I'm going to have to go and find it. So just bear with me. Sorry about that. So it's Andy Frazier, because as I say, this has been put together in real time. Andy Frazier by Free. This is a great example of the bass players down here and Paul Kossoff's up here, and there's this gap in the middle. And so what happens here is Andy Frazier follows him. And I think Andy Frazier was more than a bass player, more than a songwriter and everything else. But I think in this band of teenagers, I mean, we're talking like 17, 19 years of age, playing with a maturity and the kind of soul of tapping into the heart center of the person listening to the music through sometimes a 3-inch speaker in mono was incredible. And this album, Free Live, features a track called Mr. Big. There is so much going on in this track, and obviously there is a part when the guitar solo comes in where Paul Kossoff reaches out to the speaker nearest you, wherever you're sat listening, and he pulls out your heart and he basically squeezes it till you take notice of every single note as he takes you up the fretboard to a place where you literally feel what it's like to be alive and feel the wonder of rock music. Aside from that, at the same time that Paul Kossoff is doing that, Andy Frazier is walking up the neck of his bass guitar and playing a dance. He's literally playing a dance of notes that sits around Kossoff's picking and Simon Kirk's thunderous bass, rhythmic, simplistic. And you can see in your mind's eye Paul Rodgers rocking backwards and forwards, lost in this instrumental section of this music that is coming just after his heartfelt, wrenching, emotional use of words. But all the time, you have Andy Frazier going up and up his SG bass to a place that must have made such an impact then as it does now. And this again is where I realised, because Free Live was where I came in with Free. So on a track like Mr. Big, yes, I was I am a huge Paul Kossoff fan, as many of you already know. But on this track, all eyes and spotlights was on Andy Frazier at this point. So I felt I couldn't not have this guy in this list. Andy Frazier, Free Live, Mr. Big as the track to look at. The next one, I'll let you know, is Stanley Clarke, another jazz rock fusion super guy. I'll also let you know that I had this on vinyl and I spent 30 minutes before filming this trying to find it behind me, getting all the records off the shelves, thinking I'd misfiled it. Couldn't understand why I couldn't find it. Getting really, really fed up, thinking, well, I'll have to just find the CD. And then I realised when I bought the CD in the 90s that this album was one of the ones that got called during the great vinyl call of the early 90s. So I'm now thinking maybe I need to find it on vinyl again. Why have I picked this? Why haven't I picked Romantic Warrior by Return to Forever? That has got some of the amazing bass riffs on. And what is it about Stanley Clarke? I mean, School Days. Why have I picked this? Stanley Clarke to me is an all-round jazz fusion, jazz rock dude who's played with some of the best people you can imagine. But the reason why I picked this is because this is an album which will appeal to rock fans as well. He's done so many different things, but there's something very special about Rock, Pebbles and Sand from 1979. And there's a track on here called, and this is the one I'm going to focus on. Well, I could have picked anything really. Danger Street. Because I remember being in one of my bands I was in at the time, Tantrum. We were coming back from a gig in London, and we always played like metal, Rat, Dock and stuff like that in the van. And was coming back from the gig, and I thought I want to play something a bit different. And I put this on, and the singer was really into metal and not really necessarily much else. And the drum sound on the Danger Street, the way it comes in, and then the guitar riff comes on. Simon Phillips is on drums on this. It's just huge. And Neil went, "My God!" Well, listen to the production on that. And the bass playing is just so off the scale. And yes, I'm going to mention another track. All Hell Broke Loose. And the reason why All Hell Broke Loose is a great track is because Stanley Clarke is playing lead bass over his own bass. So there's a traditional bass player playing along with a driving rock rhythm instrumental song, and then over the top of it is a bass solo with a kind of really fast slapping bits and all sorts of triplets going on. Absolutely mind-blowingly fantastic. So I could have picked anything from Stanley Clarke, really. So much stuff, but I think this album is the one I'm saying to me it would open the door to me. I'd got Romantic Warrior, and now that's what I'm probably, if I do something on jazz rock, that might be number one. But this, I think, is my favourite Stanley Clarke moments. Love all of it. All of it. Even, what is it? We Supply, which is a really funny, jazz funk track as well. This is the last bass player, so technically this is number one. You'll notice creatively I've done more than 10, but as long as I end with this guy, then I know where I am. This is someone else who walked the line between jazz and rock as well. And it's someone at the time I would have been quite keen. All the other guys I've mentioned and some others I haven't mentioned would have been ahead. But as the years have rolled by, I've realised just how clever this bloke is, and his legacy will live forever. And I've reviewed quite a few box sets that have come out from Esoteric recently with this guy on. The album I've picked to represent this fine musician is West Bruce and Lang Live and Kicking from 1974. And the person in question is Jack Bruce, a jazzer, playing upright bass and moving into Cream, Graham Bond, his solo stuff, everything. This is early 70s. And obviously he spent a lot of time in his career moving in and out of his prowess as a bass player because he wanted to be seen as a composer and a songwriter. And I love his solo albums, and even the stuff he did with Bernie Marsden, even the stuff, all the stuff. But there's something about a track on here, and the track is on side 2, and it's called Powerhouse Sod. He also does it on, I think, the BBC stuff. But Powerhouse Sod is an absolute tour de force of bass playing in a power trio with Leslie West, Corky Lang behind him. It's absolutely, it's incredible. It's jaw-dropping. It's exciting. It's rock and roll. It's raw. You can almost see the feet sticking to the beer-soaked carpets, whatever's going on back then. It should have been a double. Surely someone knew they'd recorded more than 4 tracks. Where is the West Bruce and Lane box set? Where is it? But Jack Bruce, great player, wonderful stuff. Songs for a Tailor, Harmony Row, Sunshine of Your Love. I could have gone anywhere, couldn't I? Spoonful, all that stuff with Cream. But Powerhouse Sod from this album, West Bruce and Lane Live and Kick in 1974, is where I'm going to draw a line. So that is my selection of some of the most influential bass players of all time. Who are yours? Who did I miss out? Who are you thinking of now that you're thinking, how did Phil miss out this person? I must tell him. Tell me in the comments. Let's see what else we should do and what else we could do. The world of bass playing. What albums? What tracks? What other tracks could I have picked? Did I pick representative albums? What would you have chosen? Were any of these names a surprise? Let me know. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And please subscribe and ring that little bell. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Become a patron and support what I do here and see more of what I do here. And you'll see it before anyone else sees it here. And you can also buy merch. There's so many ways you can support what I do here. And let me know what you'd like to see as well. So thank you all. Stay safe, keep spinning those discs, and I'll see you all very, very soon.